Hello, welcome back to Unity 101 Create with Code. So, on the Unity Learn website, you can type in here, Create with Code. Taking that will take you to the course Create with Code. Now, all of this is very helpful. We're going to cover all of this in the first video series, and starting with, we're going to be downloading this file. Click on this, we'll send you to we'll download it to your computer. After downloading the file, extract it to where you want it to be. So, here we have it. Once there, you are going to drag into the inspector here. It will ask you to import all of these. Now, don't worry, there may be some errors. We will cover that shortly. So, clearing them, as they're not too important. You'll notice that we have, now in our assets, a course library. Going to this, we've got source files, the ground, obstacles, sky, and vehicles. Now, deleting these, so we do not need them anymore. We're going to drag in the ground. Now, issue being, it's pink. If you look here, material, the shader is set to standard. To fix this, we choose the right pipeline, which is Universal Render Pipeline and Lit. Now it is white, so we find the material. As you can see, it is here. Click on this icon, pulls up the option to have a texture. The one we want in particular is road-tiled. Click on this, we'll add the material. There we go. We now have the road. For the others, as you can see, we have the same issue. They all have different albedo. So, that's text military green. So, we go to Universal Render Pipeline, to Lit, go to base map, text military green. What is this one? Textures props. So, change these again. Textures props. Polygon nature. Changing these to polygon nature. Mountain skybox. So that's a skybox. So I'm gonna go here, skybox. I believe it might be a panoramic. Prop signs. Legacy shaders diffuse. Which is going to be, if we change it there, is it going to change it? No. We'll have a look at that after. We could just put it as this for now. This one is Simple Town. So changing this one over, Universal Render Pipeline to Lit, Simple Town. So, setting up the area. First, we're going to do some lighting, and we're going to create new lighting settings. So we're going to call this main. I'm going to cut that out from there, and we're going to put it in our project folder. With this, we can then set a skybox. So our default skybox, we want it to be the one we just made. which is this one. I'm not sure that's the right setting. We can have a look at that later. But for now, we'll leave it. Right now, we'll set it back. So let's go for a default skybox. There we go. So, now we have the road. We're going to put this in a parent object. I'm going to call this road. Going back, we're going to take our vehicles. And each one we need to fix. So going back to the inspector, we're going to add the correct. Oh, never mind. They're already fixed. It did it automatically, thankfully. So, attached to this, we have colliders. And we're going to add a mesh. We're not going to add a mesh to this object directly. We're going to create a parent. I'm going to call this player. Now then, setting this to 0 and setting the model inside to 0. To player now, we're going to add a rigid body. I'm going to add a script. So I'm going to go over to assets, our project, go to scripts. I'm going to right click and create a new mono behavior script. I'm going to call this player controller. Wait for that to compile. Just gonna scroll down to the next item on the list. So now we've got a game object, of which we've called the player. Got a game object, which is the road. We're going to make some more. So, go into the course library. We've got some source. We've got some FBX. What do we have? Got some triangle. Got some vans, cars. Quite a few props. So, let's create an empty game object. And we're going to call this obstacle. And we're going to make that prop crate child. We're setting this to 0. We're going to put it there. Move it there for a second. I'm going to find a nice material for it, which we already have here. So we're just going to drag this in. There we go. To this obstacle, we're going to add a rigid body. And I will explain to you what the rigid body does. So, the rigid body affects physics. This allows us to control its weight in mass, its drag, the angular drag, the center of mass, the tensor value, whether it uses gravity or not, whether it's kinematic, how the physics calculations are calculated, its collision detection, whether we can freeze its position X, Y, Z in rotation, and what layers to include. Now, if we were to load the game, it would be a bit lower down. It would not be very pleasant. So let's have a look at the reposition of the camera. The camera at the moment is set here. So, let's set this to a value that allows us to see above the car and at a slight downward angle. So if we set this to, let's say, a position of 10, that should be fine. And rotate this down. So let's have a look at 20. 20 looks fine. Having this now, we can keep it as main camera and keep this tag there as main camera. Control S to save. Now, our first script now has compiled, we can add here. So we called it player controller. Go into the scripts, we can double click and open this. First thing we want to do, delete these for now, and let's go through what this script does. Getting rid of any errors. So the first thing you see is it says using Unity Engine. This is a system library. This one specifically is coming from Unity themselves. This includes fields such as mono behavior. There are several and we will cover them all in time. This is a declaration of what the file is. So this is a public file of a class type we have called player controller. It inherits from mono behavior. Now then, as you saw, it started with void start, void update. So, in start, this is before the first frame of the game occurs. Update is every single frame. So if we want to move the vehicle forward, we can put it here. I'm going to add a comment to the script stating exactly what we plan on doing. So, what we're going to do is we're going to find the transform of said object. We're going to translate it on a singular value. Now as we're going forward, it's going to be on the Z value. I'm going to add it to 1. Now saving this and going back over, we will notice now, let me just add to this road a rigid body because I want to freeze everything, turn off use gravity, make sure we've got everything for the player, our script, and the player will move. It will push this box out of the way, and off it goes. At a very alarming rate. So let's make this editable. So, we're going to change this to use the vector system. Using the vector system works on using X, Y, Z. So, a vector is a mathematical term using the values X, Y, Z. So this is saying on vector 3, you're going to go forward by changing the Z value. As you saw, it shut off very, very quickly. So we're going to add in a couple of variables. The first one is time dot delta time. Time dot delta time is a calculation of frames and the difference between the time. So delta is a Greek mathematical term meaning difference between two values. So, looking at time and the difference between that and the next time between the frames. We're then going to multiply it by a variable. I'm going to make this a float. To make it a float, we can put our value, .0, f. F meaning float. Going back to the game. We're going to disable the obstacle, and we're going to play. And there we go. It's not zooming off. It is, but we will get to the camera shortly. Now then. Now we've got an obstacle, we're going to add a few more. So, let's go back to the scene view. Move this, and Control D or Command D, move this around. So we're going to space it nicely, so you can move. Oh, that one's a bit in the air. Let's move that down. There we go. So you can see. And let's make this a bit more of a challenge and put a few in the middle. Zooming out so we can see. Let's zoom along. Put one in the middle there. And one in the middle there. Now, it's all good and well, however, what if you want to adjust the speed in the inspector here? So if we have a look, I'm going to move this player to here. The script currently has nothing there. If we go over to our script, we can now add what's known as a variable. So the first variable we're going to make is a public float. We're going to call this speed. I'm going to initialize this at 20. However, this can change. Now, where we have put 20 here, we're going to write speed instead. Saying that you are going to multiply vector forward times delta dot delta time multiplied by the speed variable. Going back, we can now allow the script to compile, and you'll see on the right hand side we've got a speed variable. If we were to set this to say 200, we would go 10 times quicker than before. Which we don't want. Let's put that down to 10. Just noticed a bit of a bug. They all have rigid body. I'm going to disable gravity for every single one of them. So I'm going through, disable gravity. There we go. So as you can see, that when we play, the camera gets left behind. So we're going to create a new script. I'm going to call this camera controller, as it's controlling the camera. Now, attaching that to the camera, just going to drag and drop, we can open it up. We're going to delete the start, because we don't need it, but we're going to keep the update. We're going to declare a variable, and this is going to be called a game object variable, capital G and J, and this is going to be the player. And we're not going to initialize it yet. So, in update, we want to transform position. I'm going to tell it that its position is equal to player position. So we need to do transform.position and spell it correctly. Which, the problem is, it would say the transform position of the camera is exactly the position of the player. So we're going to add a new variable, which is a new vector 3. I'm going to put it as a offset of these values. So 0 on the X, 5 on the Y, and -7 on the Z. I'm going to have a look how this works. So, I'm going to click on play. I've got it at 10, so I'm going to go slower. And if you look, we have an error. Now, looking at this area, the variable player of camera control has not been assigned. Now if you remember, within the script, we did a public GameObject declaration, and we did not initialize it here. However, if you go up to script, it now says GameObject player. To fix this, we click on player, drag, drop, done, and click play. And there we go. Now, as you notice, the camera is a bit janky. We will fix this soon. The first thing we're going to change, however, is this. Because what if we want a different offset? So, we're going to go up here and we're going to declare it. So we're going to go public vector3 and we're going to call it offset. This allows us to change it on the fly. However, we're going to have to declare a variable here. So, now vector3, 0, 5, minus 7. Now, you don't have to put spaces, but I enjoy putting spaces there because it's easier to read. And now, if we head over to the inspector, we will notice that we have the ability to change offset here. However, as you saw, there was a slight issue with it being janky. To fix this, Unity comes with many update types. One is update, as we have seen. The other would be void, fixed, update, and another is void late update. So, as this is a camera, what we're going to do is we're going to put this into late update. I'm just showing you what each one does. So this one, fixed update, is affecting the physics components of GameObjects. Example is the controls. Update is affecting in-game frames, so animations, interactions, etc. Late update controls what happens after update with a small delay. This is used for camera. So now, if we go back to the editor and play, we will notice it is now much smoother. And there you go. And I'm going to end the video here, and your challenge will be to get this set up, adding rigid body to your car, having a look at the script, having the player script working with the variable of speed, and the main camera working with the game object, player, attached, and an offset which you are comfortable with. At this instance, I'm going to leave this at 0, 5 and minus 7. You can pick whatever you like. You can have it top down if you wish. So I will see you in the next video, and I wish you all the best.